So, as always, we have Marlayna and myself, Fabi. Marlayna is a channel for High Priest Adama, and she is going to go into her little trance and channel Adama, and he can kind of share the message he wants. And today, we're also going to have, for those listening and right now or in the future, if you listen to this or watch this, you'll get an energetic offering from Mother Mary. So thank you so much to Mother Mary for providing that to us. Yeah, I will hand it over to you, and then you can have Adama come in and share what he wants to, and then we can get rolling.
Sounds good. So just like a quick little spiel about this energetic offering, there's nothing that you have to do on the receiving end besides just like express open intent and not close off your energy. And note that even if you don't feel anything, they're still working with you. So it kind of might be one of those things where you might just have a nice piece of meditation, or you might just sit here and listen to the podcast or the live and not experience anything. But also some of you might have a little bit more of the visceral experience too of these energetic offerings. So we have Mother Mary offering part of the energy offering, and then we also have Ascended Master Adama doing the same as well. But I guess without any further ado, I will hand things over to him. Good morning, everyone, and indeed it is a beautiful day. Now, as has been correctly divined by both Marlayna and Fabi, today's offering will be of a similar nature to the lessons that will be brought through today as well, and the questions that will be asked and answered. And that is the topic of the Divine Feminine. So you may find that as you are listening to this channeling, as you are listening to this Q&A session, that the energies of your Divine Masculine and Divine Feminine may experience a bit of balancing. And you may also note that this offering may extend longer than the episode runs for. So if you feel my presence or Mother Mary's presence with you after the offering, then this will be why. But that is all I would like to say for our opener, and let's open up the floor to any questions.
Okay, so anyone who's watching, please make anyone can ask questions. You can either put it in the comments or in this little question box. But first, how about we define some terms? I know you love that so much, Adama. So let's define, what do you mean when we talk about Divine Feminine, what do we mean about that? When we talk about the womb, what do we mean about that? And then also added to that, what if you do not have a womb? What does that mean for you?
Alrighty, so we will start off by describing Divine Masculine and Divine Feminine, for both are two sides of the same coin. Now, the Divine Feminine energy is commonly known as the yin energy, or the energy of the moon, as it is commonly associated. And so the Divine Feminine is the energy of the creator. However, it is the divine energy of creating something out of nothing. So the Divine Feminine is very good at receiving energy. The Divine Feminine is very good at creating, but perhaps the Divine Feminine may be a bit ungrounded when she is in a vacuum. And contrarily, the Divine Masculine is associated with the Yang and the Sun, and it is more so of a generative energy as opposed to a creative energy. So the masculine in the human body is associated with bringing energy from the higher energy centers into the physical body, whereas the feminine energy center is all about finding the divine within yourself and bringing it up to reach your crown chakra. So in this way, it's commonly believed that Divine Masculine energy flows down the spine and Divine Feminine energy flows up the spine. However, of course, space and time are not very real, so in this, you may find that if your belief system does not line up with this viewpoint, then it is no matter. Now, Divine Feminine and Masculine must be in balance in order for a being to be fully healthy and in alignment with their higher self. And so in this way, you may find that you do not need to have a womb, to have a physical uterus and a womb in your body in order to have a womb wound. For the womb is more of an energetic center and perhaps is a name for a very specific bandwidth of frequency located within the sacral chakra, which is the chakra associated with the color orange and is located in the uterus, or in the reproductive organs. And so this is the chakra that will have a wound to it if you have what is called a womb wound. And perhaps a better term for a womb wound is a creator wound, for it is a wound of the divine feminine creatorship in your own body or in your own energy or mentality. Does this make sense?
Oh, yes, very much so.
All right. And
Go on if there's more.
no more, I was going to say, continue.
So I really like when you redefined it, because it's really hard when we speak of terms that aren't may not feel applicable to everyone. So maybe you don't have a womb, maybe you don't identify as female, maybe you're more masculine, and maybe talk a little bit about the misconception that only women have feminine energy and only men have masculine energy. We have both, but share a little bit more about that, please.
Indeed, that is a great point, and thank you for bringing it up. Now, divine feminine and divine masculine energies, as I have said, must be in balance for one to be fully present in their body and fully healthy and embodied. And so, this being said, this is not a mutually exclusive phenomenon for just men or women. Both men and women have energy that is of the masculine and the feminine side, and both men and women may have a womb wound, because the womb wound is a wound of divine feminine energy. And so if you have a wound of your divine feminine energy, then you have a womb wound. And this is also the wound that is most commonly called toxic masculinity. For there is no such thing as toxic masculinity, because all masculinity is divine, just as all femininity is divine. It is only the imbalance of masculine and feminine energies that begins to cause issues in the human form and in the human psyche when they are imbalanced.
Wow, that's a clip right there. So why do we struggle with the womb wound as surface dwellers?
You know the answer to this question.
I am not asking
the
question for myself, Adama. I'm asking the question for the masses, okay?
Touche, touche. I'm rolling my eyes, but they're closed right now, so you can't see it. But this is due to our beloved Christianity, or perhaps not just Christianity, but institutionalized religion, to go back to previous channelings and previous points that have been made across many channelings. So the divine feminine has been suppressed by very many years of a patriarchal viewpoint on a major scale, where the majority of religions that are at large in the world right now are based from a very masculine point of view. So this is not just Christianity, and this is not just the Abrahamic religion. These are all major religions at the moment right now that follow the patriarchal viewpoint. And perhaps many of these religions, especially the Eastern religions, did not initially follow this divinely masculine viewpoint, but as Western culture has undergone its, or as Western culture has chosen the paths of colonization and the paths of, what do I call it, globalization of Western culture, this has caused many of the people who are practicing these Eastern religions that are inherently feminine to view these inherently feminine religions from an inherently masculine point of view. And so this causes these religions to develop an inherently divinely masculine sense, if you will. And so almost every single being on earth at this moment has a womb wound because they feel disempowered by either the government that they live in, or the people around them, or the religion that they're practicing, or they just feel beaten down and horrible about the state of affairs in the world, because they're quite tumultuous at this moment, and there's lots of war and strife and difficult things happening right now that are causing many people to step out of their feminine energy and step into their masculine energy because they feel unsafe in the world around them.
So speak a little bit about what are things that people can say, basically, if these things are coming up for you, it is contributed by the womb wound, or the womb wound is kind of the indicator of these specific things. What are some of those examples?
So some specific examples may be just a feeling of general disempowerment. And perhaps the biggest example right now, especially among beings who identify as female, is the people pleaser tendencies. So if you have a tendency to put aside your own needs for the sake of others, then this is an example of the womb wound. For you do not feel safe enough to ask for your own needs to be met. And so you are stepping out of your divine feminine, which is asking your needs to be met, and you are stepping into your divine masculine, which is meeting other people's needs. Because the main role of the divine masculine, as is commonly said, is that of the provider and protector. But also I would like to note that you may not rely on anybody except for yourself to meet your own needs. However, there are some needs that must be met through other people, but of course, always turn internally first and meet your own needs before turning externally to somebody else. Just a note. But another practical example of this could be if you, for example, are... So perhaps this is a very big thing among the younger generations, perhaps younger millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And these generations have a tendency to, if they are offered something for free, they will not take it. For they believe that they will owe the person after this, even if the person who is providing them this free gift is saying that it is free and they expect nothing back. Many of these beings will then inherently have this need, feel this need to give that other person something in return. And so a very common example of this would be a compliment. Somebody walks up to you in a coffee shop and says, "Oh my God, you're so pretty. I love your hair." The first instinct that you have, or the first instinct that most women have, is, "Oh my God, thank you so much. I love XYZ about you too." And that's not inherently bad. Of course not. It's never bad to give somebody a compliment. But the reason that many women feel the need to give this compliment back is because they cannot accept the compliment in themselves.
Yeah.
And so this is a lack of divine feminine energy, because the divine feminine energy is all about accepting and receiving. And if you can't accept and receive, then perhaps you're not in your divine feminine. So a great little baby step per se would be to identify where you're having these hangups, where you're not receiving things in your life, and practice receiving them and giving nothing back. And it might feel really uncomfortable at first to have somebody give you a compliment and then just say nothing back except for, "Oh my gosh, thank you, I'm so flattered." It's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel weird. But ultimately, it's those little baby steps that make for the bigger leaps towards healing this womb wound that you have.
So give us some examples of what is the divine feminine. Like what would that look like? And I know you mentioned a few of different things, but because we haven't seen examples of the divine feminine, I think it's sometimes hard for us to conceptualize that, because we've all been so much in our masculine. And especially for women who, like myself, are hyper independent, in a corporate role. A lot of people here that follow me personally are entrepreneurs. So like even the business world is you're quote unquote are expected to be in your masculine most of the time. And so this, we've talked about the culture of the West, and most of the world is very much expecting everyone to be in their masculine. But I feel like there's also a piece there from like a wounded masculine perspective, because it's not necessarily being in your divine masculine by being the things that we see as, masculine. So if you could maybe just give us like what is the divine masculine look like, and what does the divine feminine look like?
So perhaps it would be best to explain these terms in terms of hunters and gatherers.
Okay.
So obviously humans used to be hunters and gatherers, and that is what your physical bodies are programmed for at this moment in time.
Okay.
So all of your human bodies are not meant to be working corporate 9-to-5 jobs. You are meant to be running through the fields looking for berries and hunting bears. Maybe not bears, but you get my point. So that being said, this is a major cause of stress and nervous system dysregulation, but that's a topic for another time.
Yes.
And so a divine masculine in the hunter and gatherer sense would be, sorry, my cat's scratching to get out. You're not coming out here, kitty. You killed a bird today. Not happening again. So perhaps a divine masculine in the hunter-gatherer sense would be a being who is a hunter. He is one who goes out and he performs these acts of extreme physicality to provide for his family. And so in this way, I say his, but he does not have to be exclusively a man. There can be women who are in their divine masculine, and this is their soul path. But for all intents and purposes of this analogy, we shall say that the divine masculine is a male being, and the divine feminine is a female being. But of course, this may not always be the case. Now, the divine feminine is the gatherer. She's going to have the baby on her hip, and she's going to be walking through the woods, and she's going to be with this group of other women who are going to have protection in numbers, and they're going to raise these children as a group, and they are all going to help each other, and they're going to be one part of a huge whole community, and the whole community is going to operate as one. So no one woman in the divine feminine will ever raise a child by herself. And this is important because an important aspect of the divine feminine is this community. It's the ability to receive help from your peers, to receive help from your family, whether that's your blood family or your chosen family. And most importantly, to receive the offerings from the divine masculine. Because if the divine feminine can't receive offerings from her divine masculine, then what is the point of having the difference between divine feminine and divine masculine? Because the divine feminine cannot do everything by herself, just like the divine masculine cannot do everything by himself. And so in today's society, perhaps an ideal divine masculine and divine feminine relationship, if money were no object, would be a man who takes care of all of the female's physical needs, and a woman who takes care of all of the energetic and social and spiritual needs of not only just their nuclear family, but also their community as a whole. So just as the female works in tandem with the other women and the other divine feminines, so will the masculine work in tandem with the other divine masculines to provide and protect for these roles. So perhaps there's one divine masculine in a community that will be a great hunter, and he'll take care of all the meat gathering. And then there's another divine masculine who's very good at protection. So he'll make sure that no animals get near any of our crops, or no bears attack the village, or whatever that may be. And then there might be another divine masculine who's really good at building stuff. So he's going to build all the houses, and he's going to take care of all the buildings and all the structures and all that jazz. So there's no one aspect to the divine masculine or feminine, but if you find yourself questioning whether this is a divine masculine aspect or a divine feminine aspect, you may ask yourself, if I were in hunter-gatherer times, would this be something that the masculine would do, or would this be something the feminine would do? And it might take a little bit of, I guess, like drawing lines, creating concepts that maybe don't seem inherent, like they inherently exist, but ultimately this will be a very good analogy for people who are learning to differentiate between the masculine and the feminine. And of course, the yin and yang symbols from Eastern esotericism are very good definitions for the masculine and feminine as well as the sun and the moon in tarot cards as well. So there are many different aspects of the divine masculine and feminine, and truly, there's no way for us to truly define all of the intricacies of both of these definitions, but this is a great jumping off point for you to form your own definition, because that's the big thing here. It's not about me giving you definitions, it's about me giving you the concept and you learning what the definition means to you, because that's what we're here on earth to do.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think the piece that is going to be challenging is to take the concepts of how humans should be or was created to be and operate, and then see it's just clearer and clearer the discrepancy between how we're living now, i.e. we're living by ourselves, we don't have a village, so everyone's very individualistic. We're sitting down in front of a computer for 8 hours straight. We're not going outside. So all of those things are adding to this womb wound that was created by, we've talked about religion, we've talked about, so it is not only the original, kind of burying of the feminine and kind of overemphasizing the masculine. It is also the culture and the society that we live in is not conducive to how we were created to be. And so this creator wound, which I really love that term, it helps me really kind of put it in context where we are made to be creators, And because we have this wound, we feel disconnected from the creator because we aren't creating. Because you're sitting in front of a desk for 8 hours, that is not what you're meant to do. You were meant to experience and to create. And so the disconnect just gets bigger and bigger between who, like from a like primal perspective, who you were made to be, from a spiritual perspective, from an energetic perspective. No wonder we're struggling here, right? So how do we start kind of working towards shortening that divide? Like, what are tips that you have that you can say, you know, we know where we live, we all know how life is here on Earth, right? So we can't really technically change the past in all sense and purposes. I know time doesn't exist, but we can't change the past, but we can change how we are living day to day. So what are things that people can do on a day-to-day basis that bridges that divide that has been created by millennia of all of the things we talked about, and understanding that we still live in 3D. And so, yes, you still need to go to your job, you still need to pay your bills. It's not ideal, but how can we still create? Because I believe truly that there is a way, and but share a little bit more about that.
So perhaps in an ideal world, everybody would live similarly to how you do, Fabi, where they have some land where they can just go outside in between their work and take some time to ground and reconnect with nature. But of course, unfortunately, that is not feasible at this moment. So the best way for you to reconnect with what we'll call your primal self, the way that your human was meant to be, the way that your human was meant to live, the way that your physical body is wired to programmed to live and wired to live, the best way to engage in that pathway, to walk that path, is to get outside as much as you can. And be aware that if you are wearing shoes with rubber soles, you are not receiving full grounding from the earth. Mm-hmm. And so being barefoot or buying some kind of like leather sole shoe or some kind of shoe that isn't just rubber on the bottom will be a very big benefit in helping you disperse energy from yourself into the ground. Mm-hmm. So there's this constant, in today's society, there's this constant imbalance of overstimulation and understimulation, where people are constantly physically overstimulated. Your body is constantly doing too much. You're constantly getting too much auditory input. You're getting too much visual input. You're getting too much physical stimulation from your external world. Yeah. But at the same time, you are not getting nearly enough mental stimulation. This Western society is indeed very similar to a hamster wheel. And just like a hamster can run on a wheel and get really bored, so can you. And so it's kind of like a lot of humanity has reached this point right now where they're ready to hop off the hamster wheel, but they're not ready to leave their cage. And so you have to hop off your hamster wheel. So that means you have to decide you don't want to do this anymore. You decide you don't want to be a part of this Western society anymore. And then you actually have to step out of the Western society. And that's going to mean saying no to engagements. That's going to be not going out and partying. That's going to be not taking part in Western culture, or as it is sometimes called, rape culture. Because that is a very big part of Western society, is that perhaps rape is a very strong word, but people are abusing their access to your time. Yes. People are, there's no boundaries. Like back in the old days, if you wanted to talk to your friend, you would have to go physically encounter them, or you'd have to send them a snail mail. Yes. But right now, there's text messages, and people are constantly in contact with other people. And so, unfortunately, much of that contact is not of a very productive or social nature. It's mostly just people talking at each other, not people talking to each other, if this makes sense. And so, if you can change the way that you interact with these people to make these interactions more productive, I guess is the right word. I can't quite think of a proper term, but we'll go with productive. More productive, more fruitful, more uplifting, more, I don't want to say lighthearted, because it isn't the best good for you to talk about things that are dark sometimes, because you can't ignore the dark just to focus on the light. That's not how healing and growth works. But there is going to be a better balance that you'll need to find. And for a lot of people, when they when they decide to step out of their hamster cage, when they decide to start making these choices that are actually going to make a difference in their life, they might find that they lose a lot of friends because a lot of people are not aligned with this path, and it takes a lot of work, and it's not always comfortable to walk the path of healing, especially when you are incarnated in this moment in time, because there is so much collective trauma just hanging out in the atmosphere that even after you're done healing your own journey, you're done healing your own self, you're going to start pulling in these energies from the atmosphere around you. And it does suck, as this channel would say, but it is all for the highest and best good. And of course, the guys will never give you money you can take, but that is a slight digression. Now, back to the divine masculine and feminine, though, another way that you could balance this is perhaps by taking some time to go camping. And I know this is not a very enjoyable activity for many, so I would encourage you to do this in any way that it is doable for you, whether that is glamping or going out and finding a cabin away from society and just settling down and perhaps detoxing from your screen time a bit, or perhaps even just lowering your screen time. But there are very many energy fields that are emitted by modern day technology that can have negative impacts on your energy body if you are not properly grounded and protected from these energies. And so a good way to ground yourself and to re-find your center, to recenter yourself, would be to go out into a cabin in the middle of the woods, or go find a campground and take a tent and just sleep out in the earth, sleep out and reconnect, or sleep out in the middle of nowhere, reconnect with nature, give your body some time to just like decompress from everything that's been going on in your life, because much of modern day society is very strenuous and very pressurized. And so just give yourself time to depressurize, give yourself time to decompress.
That's such a good word to use, to decompress and kind of reset and detox from, life, just keep going. One of the things that came up for me when you were speaking is speak a little bit about the rise in infertility that we're seeing, and how the spiritual nature of that, and what the connection is between the womb wound and that.
So this is going to be a very controversial statement, but I'm going to say it anyway.
I want you to say it. Please say it.
The womb wound is not the sole cause of infertility. The biggest cause of infertility on this planet right now are mothers who are not fit to have children, or mothers who are with the wrong partner. So if you are with the wrong partner, or you find yourself to be infertile, then it is not your path to have children in this lifetime. And the only thing that you may possibly do to heal this, if it is even possible to heal it, is to find the partner that is meant for you. And so this is partially a choice on the soul level. So these beings' souls choose this before they incarnate in this lifetime, whether they remember it or not. But also, this is a way to combat overpopulation on the planet at the moment, and perhaps make this transition from the old way of having children, which is the way that it is done now, which is where anyone may have a children all willy-nilly, to a new fifth dimensional way of having children, where only beings who are of a specific energetic frequency and are in a committed relationship with their partner that is unbreakable, they may have children, but no other beings may. And so this will also, although it may seem to be a negative thing at first, because if you want to have children and you can't, that would be indeed devastating. But of course, you may adopt children. And this may also limit the amount of teenage pregnancies, because this is an epidemic on Earth at this moment, and it is a true tragedy, because the teenage form in the way that it is right now for humans is not meant to bear children. And perhaps it never was, despite your science's claims that you're most fertile between 15 and 25. That's not true. It's not true. You might have the most viable eggs, but it is more of an energetic process that must occur that is truly the determinant of, or the determining factor of your fertility or your lack of fertility. So to give you a practical example, this channel is going to become infertile after having one child, because that is all she is allowed to have in this lifetime. That's all her soul wants her to have. So this may be the case for many beings. They may have more than one child and then go infertile, or some beings may go infertile before they even have any children, due to the fact that their souls are not meant to have children in this lifetime. And I would also like to note that children create karma. So if your soul has chosen to not have a child, then perhaps it is because you have other karma that you will need to work through in this lifetime. And so I would recommend focusing on that karma instead of having a child or not having a child.
So, okay, so I have a question though. So talk to me about the spirituality around, like, why are there so many teen pregnancies then? Like, if the soul needed to make the decision, like, what happens there? Like, what is that just a karmic lesson that needs to be learned? Like, where does this come in, and why now, I guess is my question. Like, why has this not been the case for the time that we've been on Earth? Because I feel like it makes so much sense for it only to be an energetic match, and for these children to be born in a way, in a relationship, in a situation that will be as beneficial to their soul to grow up, whatever. But I feel like that hasn't happened before. Like, what's changed?
The Earth is changing.
Okay.
Before, the vibrational frequency of the Earth was incompatible with the fifth dimensional souls that are coming through now. And so this is just a part of humanity's evolution as a whole. So
Okay.
before this, there were actually very many teen pregnancies. And so this is quite a big karmic resurgence, if you will, where many of these teens who are getting pregnant right now are getting pregnant because in previous lifetimes, they themselves either impregnated a teenager through the betrothals that would happen between, say, a 40, 50-year-old man and a 14, 15-year-old girl. And so they are having to learn the lesson of what it is like to be in that 14, 15, 17-year-old body and experience pregnancy. Similar to the way in which someone who was an abuser in a previous lifetime may be abused in this lifetime. And so it is kind of just the balancing of these energies. But also, this is partially due to the non-interference policy on Earth. And so before, the Earth was not at a vibrational frequency where we in the higher realms were able to help you out with creating this infertility in your womb. And so now we can, because many of these infertile beings are starseeds, and they wish so deeply not to come back to Earth after this lifetime that they are willing to render themselves infertile so that they do not risk the karma that may arise from having children.
So if you're watching this, or you're listening to this, and you're someone who is struggling with fertility, what is something that how would you kind of counsel that person in going inwards, connecting to their guides? Like, how do they navigate that to be able to hold space for themselves? I'm answering my own question, but how does that person, where do you go from there? Because our society does not commend infertility. Like, as a woman, you're like, when you get married, when's the first baby, when you're gonna have, like, we've chosen just to have one child, and I know that my soul, that is a choice that I've made, and I don't I don't necessarily think it's just in the case for Marlayna. I think if my incarnate self was okay with it, we would have more, but I'm not. And so that's a whole other conversation, to be able to stand firm in my boundary, because people want me to have more children. I'm like, you're not the one who's going to raise this child. I am. So what doesn't, anyway. So there's a lot there. So how would you counsel someone, any words that you would have for someone who is listening to this, who's going through that really difficult time of wanting to have a child, but it not being for them in this lifetime?
Grieve your pregnancy. Grieve your lack of pregnancy like you would if you had had a miscarriage. Because there is a part of you that already had that baby. There's a part of you in your head that had dreamt up this dream and that already had this baby, and you were holding it in your arms and it was right there and you could see it. And so to have this dissonance between that belief that you already have this baby and this knowledge that you have a womb, you have the physical parts for making a child, but you just can't. It's a dissonance between your physical body and your higher self. And so you have to mourn it like you would anything else. Go through the stages of grief, feel the anger, denial, depression, acceptance. Just let yourself feel it all. It's gonna suck. It's gonna be horrible. There's no way around it. I'm sorry, but you have to let yourself feel it. And if you have a supportive partner, let them feel it too. You guys can feel this together. Usually these are actually events that if you fully embrace them, if you fully embrace these negative emotions, that you and your partner can actually become closer together through this. And occasionally through this mourning, you might even be able to find that you learn the lesson that enables you to be able to have a child without gaining karma. And so in this way, through this grieving process of your infertility, you might find that you become fertile. But of course, that is all up to your soul nature. So take that with a grain of salt and always look inside and see if it resonates with you before accepting it as truth. But I would also like to speak on the societal pressure to have more children and the internal pressure to have children, because that is indeed a very big karmic lesson that is coming up for a lot of women right now. Because just like there were these children that were betrothed to these older men, they were only betrothed for one reason. They were fertile. That's the only reason that they were betrothed to these men. That's the only reason that they were married off to these men. And this is not just a phenomenon that happened in Western society. And unfortunately, it is a phenomenon that is still happening today.
Yeah.
So you must hold space for yourself and realize that if you are experiencing this urge to have children and you don't know why, and you feel like it's coming from outside of you, you need to reaffirm your sovereignty, not just for yourself, but for all of the women who came before you, all of the women who were forced to have children, all of the women who are still forced to have children beyond the limits of their physical capabilities. So it's bigger than just us. It's bigger than just the individual woman right now. And that brings us back to the collective of divine femininity, because there is such an integral community between the divine feminine. And truly, there is no difference between my divine femininity or the divine femininity of this being, Adama, or the channel, Marlayna, and Fabi, or the other beings who are also watching this. So just as you are healing your own divine feminine, you are also healing the divine feminine of all of the girls and women who came before you, and all of the girls and women who will come after you and suffer through these same experiences. And perhaps that will give you a little bit of strength and fortitude to know that it's not just for you, and to know that this is bigger than you, and that in healing your own wound and in processing your own guilt and your own pressure that you feel that from others or that you put onto yourself, you are helping so many other women.
That's amazing. I got chills when you said that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think one thing that I wanted to touch on before we drop, and I want to make sure you share before we kind of end this, anything else that's coming through for you want to share with the group. So I think something just to reiterate, I know I've said this a few times, is that everyone has divine feminine and divine masculine in them. And the balancing of those two things is extremely important. So if you're a man watching this, how would you say, what would you specifically for the men say, what can they do to heal their divine feminine?
Love the women in your life in the way that you wish you were loved as a child. And that might be a bit difficult for a lot of men, or perhaps anybody in general may do this as well, but specifically the men, because the masculine because their role is indeed that of the physical protectors and the physical providers. And so when you are a child, you are solely in your divine feminine energy until you develop autonomy, until you have the ability to take care of yourself. And so that arises for different people at different times. But for all of the men out there who may watch this, I would encourage you to look into yourself and find that inner child, find that 5-year-old part of you, that 7-year-old part of you, and ask him what he wanted most out of life, what he wanted most from his caretakers in that moment, and strive to provide that to everyone that you can. But of course, have boundaries in yourself. Don't overextend yourself. Don't step into the people pleaser wound. So you have to, of course, first meet these needs inside of yourself first, and then turn externally and meet them externally. But many men may find that they may, when they turn to meet these needs externally, be triggered or fall into these patterns that cause these wounds to arise to the surface. And so if you have a romantic relationship with a female, you may find that she may mirror you in a way so that you may see these wounds that are inside of you coming up in her, or she may trigger these wounds inside of you. And so in the divine masculine, or when you are in your divine masculine, you need to look at a divine feminine mirror and find what you don't like in that divine feminine mirror, and then look for all of those same things within yourself, because I guarantee you they're all there. If you look at somebody else and say, oh, I don't like that, it's inside of you. And the reason that you don't like it in them is because you don't like it in yourself. So it's all about turning inwards and turning outwards. And there's a balance between that, right? Especially for the divine masculine, whereas the divine feminine is always going to be encouraged to turn inwards, turn inwards, turn inwards. The divine masculine will have to turn inwards to heal his divine femininity, and then turn outwards to heal everything else.
Okay.
Does this make sense?
So say that again. Okay, so this topic is so juicy, right? There's so much here. I think because we do not know, as women, we do not know what it means to be in our divine feminine, and hence because we are now divine masculine in an unhealthy way. The divine masculine does not have that mirror always that we can be there, and so like it's not benefiting the men either. Like this, the patriarchy is hurting everyone. It doesn't benefit men and hurt women. And when you say this is how we treat children, it is so interesting because like it was like an aha moment for me, because the way we treat children is the way we treat the divine feminine. Because like you said, like the children are not helpless, but they are to the point of they need the support of their caregivers. And I think the divine feminine needs the divine masculine in the same way, not in a helpless way and an overpowering way, but this is how we see anything that's weaker than us, right? We see anything that's weaker than us, we don't see the beauty in that, we don't see the creativity in it, we don't see the playfulness, the being able to experience life in a way that a child does, because we see that as weaker. But then when you see that through the eyes of a child, and you see all the things that they're able to appreciate and do, that's when the divine feminine can come out, because of that safety that's being created by the divine masculine. So I don't even know if I have a question. It's just like a stream of consciousness. But I think one of the things that you mentioned is a lot of us go into our divine masculine because we don't have safety. Speak a little bit about how to create that safety for yourself first, because if you don't always have it's really sometimes hard to be in a place where you're safe, but the safety needs to come from yourself first. So speak a little bit about that.
So you are exactly right. The safety does indeed have to come first from yourself. There is nobody in this world who can make you feel safe if you do not first feel safe inside of yourself. And so this is going to be a really big process of unprogramming all these negative beliefs from childhood. So if you haven't read the 4 Agreements, this book talks about this topic a lot, but it's basically the idea that when you are a child, you rely so heavily on your parents for these external inputs and these external feedbacks about who you are and where you fit into this world. And you also rely on your peers too. So that means that if you're in kindergarten and some little douchebag kid turns to you and says, hey, you're ugly, and the 5-year-old part of you goes, oh my God, wait, my peer said I'm ugly? Am I really ugly? And then 15 years go by and you're 20 years old and you feel like the ugliest person on earth and you can't figure out why. And it's because that 5-year-old part of yourself agreed with that little kid that you were ugly. And this could go for anything. So it's going to be all about going back inwards and making your inner child feel safe. So going back, and you might even have to visualize it. You might have to sit down and put a chair across from yourself, and you sit in one chair and you pretend to be adult you, and then you go sit in the other chair and you pretend to be 5-year-old you. And so you sit in the adult chair and you're like, all right, listen, 5-year-old self, I am so sorry that happened to you, but that is not true at all. You're actually really pretty or handsome or whatever it is you think that you are. Or you could say it doesn't even matter if you're pretty because beauty's a social construct anyways. But, or beauty's in the eye of the beholder, or whatever workaround, whatever like cognitive switch that you want to make in that thought, you need to sit down with that part of yourself where that thought initiated and have a conversation. And you can call in your higher guides. You can ask your guides to help you. Mother Mary and the archangels are very good about helping with these things, and they can help you transmute this energy. They can help you assimilate this part of yourself into yourself, all those different things, whatever you need in that moment. But talking to your inner child and parenting yourself, I really cannot emphasize, parenting yourself is so important in this. You have to become the parent that your inner child needed. And so for my divine feminine folks out there, this does mean that you're going to have to step into your divine masculine. You're going to have to be both in your divine masculine and your divine feminine at the same time, because you have to be able to provide this healing and provide this closure to yourself. But you also have to be able to receive it. You have to be able to be open to receiving this help and this safety from yourself. And if you can't receive this help and safety from yourself, then you best believe you cannot receive it from other people either. So this is going to be step one, is turning inwards, healing your own inner child, making yourself feel safe. And for those of you who are wondering, what about my physical circumstances? What if I'm in a physical place that makes me feel unsafe? Then you need to get out of there fast, because you will never be able to feel safe in your own physical body if you don't feel safe in the place where you live. And even if that's with your family, that might be triggering for some people. But even if you love your family the best or the most ever, and they have been amazing folks to you, you can still have trauma. You can still feel unsafe around your family, even if they are good people. And so it's not a statement on their character. It's not a statement on your character. It's just a statement to the way that things are right now. So if you're in a situation, in a relationship, in a living situation that feels unsafe to you, or perhaps unsafe might be a bit strong of a word, but it doesn't allow you to meet all of your physical needs, then you need to get out of Dodge ASAP. Because in removing yourself from that situation, you are going to be meeting your own need. Because the reason that you're in that situation in the first place is because there's a part of you that's looking for a need to be met. And there's a pattern that keeps repeating itself because this need is not being met. And so once you can meet your own need by removing yourself from the situation, you might find that you might stop attracting these kinds of situations. But of course, you might have to reinforce that boundary inside of yourself multiple times. You might have to remove yourself from these situations multiple times over, because the universe does like to test you and make sure that you're actually sure.
Yeah, we'll talk about that on another day. The tests that the universe loves to show you. Okay, so we have a few more minutes left. Anything from the people watching? I know we have a few people here. If you have any questions for Adama, so for those who joined later, Adama is High Priest of Telos, Ascended Master, and Marlayna, who is the channel, is channeling Adama. Any questions you may have about any of the topics we talked about today, any topics at all, feel free to drop them in the questions section or into the comments. Marlayna, I may need for you to see if there's any questions in the question section, because you're the ones seeing those since you started it.
Let's see. I do not see any questions.
Okay.
No
Anything
questions.
else from Adama?
Oh, wait, where's the question section? Is up? Yeah, no questions. Okay, cool.
Anything else from Adama, if he has anything? Otherwise, we can just wrap it up.
Yes. So I would like to say very briefly that if you would like more help, if you would like more energetic offerings from me and higher beings as well, you may ask to visit